Hey there! Have you ever looked at a sentence and felt a bit confused by all the words? Don't worry. Today, we are looking closely at a basic building block of the English language.
Right, we are talking about the phrase.
Exactly. By definition, a phrase is simply a group of two or more words. They work together to share a single idea.
But importantly, they do not have a subject and a verb acting together. It is just a piece of a larger thought.
Yes, a fragment. But here is the central question we are debating today. When someone is trying to learn English, how should they approach these word groups?
That is the big question.
Right. Should a learner focus on the strict structural architecture? I mean, the explicit grammar rules, the specific categories, and the exact mechanics of how sentences are built?
Or should they focus on the functional flow?
Meaning, how words just naturally group together to make speaking and reading easier.
Precisely. I argue strongly for the structural perspective. Understanding the grammar rules is really the only reliable way to achieve true accuracy. It is how you avoid major mistakes in communication.
And, well, I take the functional perspective. I agree on the basic definition of what a phrase is, of course, but I believe the true power of language is found in fluency, not in memorizing formulas.
Formulas are necessary, though.
I mean, we need to stop treating language like a math test. When learners get stuck on strict grammar labels, they lose the rhythm of speaking.
But those labels...
Let me just say, the ultimate goal is to stop translating single words in your head. You need to start seeing language as natural groups that add color and detail to our thoughts.
I understand why a purely natural approach sounds nice, but let's look at why categorization is actually so incredibly valuable.
Okay, let's hear it.
In English, we organize phrases into specific types based on their job. We have noun phrases, verb phrases, prepositional phrases, and a few others.
Right, the classic 8 types.
Yes, and learning to identify the main word, the anchor of that phrase, gives you a map. It shows you how the language works. Think of a phrase like a small solar system.
A solar system?
Yeah. The main word, let's say a noun, is like the sun. The descriptive words around it are the planets. They are caught in its gravity.
Ah, I see.
If you don't know the blueprint of the house, how can you know which bricks support the roof? You cannot build complex, accurate sentences on your own without knowing the physics of that solar system.
That is a very vivid picture. But I come at it from a different way. I argue that you do not need an advanced degree in astronomy to just enjoy the warmth of the sun.
Well, you do if you are trying to build a spaceship, or in this case, a proper essay.
But the human brain naturally processes language as units of meaning, not as grammar categories. Take a complex sentence like, the young girl with the red hat is singing a beautiful song in the park.
That is absolutely a lot of structural data to process at once.
Exactly. To a new learner, that many words looks scary. But understanding that sentence does not require you to stop and formally label in the park as a prepositional phrase.
Maybe not to understand it broadly, but...
Functionally, your brain just sees small word groups holding hands to paint a visual scene. The young girl tells us who. With the red hat gives a visual detail. Is singing provides the action.
I agree. That is how reading works.
The communicative purpose is what matters. When a student reads by looking for these natural meaning groups, their eyes just glide across the page. It forms a continuous movie in their mind.
Right.
If we force them to stop and categorize every single group of words, we interrupt that cognitive flow. We take away the joy of reading.
I don't disagree that fluent reading feels like a continuous movie. However, creating that movie requires a director, and that director has to understand the underlying mechanics.
But does the audience need to know them?
The learner is the director of their own speech. Applying grammar labels doesn't interrupt the flow. It actually builds the foundation that makes the flow possible. Let's look closely at prepositional phrases.
Okay.
Prepositions are those small directional words. In, on, at, under, through. The strict structural rule is that a prepositional phrase must begin with a preposition and end with a noun or pronoun.
Like, through the dark forest.
Perfect example. If a learner understands that specific architectural rule, they will build their sentences correctly every single time. They won't put their descriptive words in a random, chaotic order.
But natural intuition already guides that order. People learn through exposure and repetition.
Exposure isn't enough for everyone.
Think about verb phrases, though. A verb phrase has the main action verb plus the helping verbs. Words like is, are, have, or will. They indicate time and possibility.
Yes, they set the tense.
Let's say a learner constantly hears the phrase, have been studying. They naturally absorb the rhythm of those three words together.
They memorize the sound.
Right. They intuitively understand this group means an action started in the past and is still happening right now. They say it that way because it sounds correct to their ear. They absolutely do not need to actively analyze the relationship between the helping verbs and the main action.
Intuition alone is a dangerous teacher, though. It completely breaks down when we move from speaking to writing.
Writing is harder, I will admit that.
That natural rhythm works fine when listening to a conversation, but it creates a massive trap for a writer. This brings us to the most critical mistake learners make.
Which is?
Mixing up phrases and clauses.
Oh, that distinction is definitely a major hurdle in learning English.
It really is, and it is a hurdle that functional fluency simply cannot clear. Let's define the boundary. A clause has a subject and a verb acting together. A phrase does not.
Right.
This is a golden rule of sentence structure. Take the phrase in the morning. There is no action verb there. It is just a fragment.
True.
Now compare it to the clause when the sun rises. We have a subject, the sun, and an action, rises. When students rely purely on the rhythm of speech, they struggle to tell the difference on paper.
Because both sound like natural pauses in speech.
Exactly. They will write a phrase, put a period at the end, and think they have written a complete sentence. If you are writing a work email or an essay for school, strict rule memorization is your only safety net. Without it, your writing is very confusing.
That is a compelling argument, but have you considered how social interaction fixes this? I firmly believe the social mechanism of language naturally corrects those fragments.
How does that social correction actually work in practice, though?
Well, think about a normal conversation. Imagine you walk up to a friend at work and simply say, in the morning, and then you just stop talking.
They would stare at you.
Exactly. What is the reaction? Your friend doesn't open a grammar textbook. They simply wait. When the silence gets awkward, they will ask, okay, what happened in the morning?
Because the logic of the sentence hasn't been solved yet.
Right. The listener's brain is waiting for the core action to finish the thought. That social interaction teaches the boundary of a complete sentence better than any rigid rule.
You think so?
Yes. When you talk with real people, you quickly feel that phrases are just dependent fragments. They physically cannot stand alone without causing confusion. Human conversation teaches you the difference between a fragment and a full idea.
That feedback loop exists in spoken conversation, yes. But writing lacks that immediate correction. A piece of paper cannot look at you and ask for more information.
That is fair.
A period stops the thought permanently. Let's look at a very common error. Mistake number 1, forgetting the verb entirely.
Oh, I see that a lot.
A learner might write something like, the nice teacher from my English class. They feel they have written a lot of descriptive words, so they just drop a period at the end. That is a total structural failure.
Because there is no action driving the sentence forward.
Right. What did the teacher do? The functional approach fails here because the words flow together so smoothly. The nice teacher from my English class sounds great out loud.
It does sound like a nice group of words.
But without a structural checklist, without actively making sure your sentence has a subject and an action verb, the writer is blind to the mistake. They must deliberately search their own writing and ask, where is the core verb?
So they need a formula.
Yes, the correct structure must be something like, the nice teacher from my English class helped me. Relying on speaking rhythm doesn't stop this error from happening.
It is true that writing requires more self-editing. But if we obsess over finding the core verb, we risk making the language feel entirely robotic.
Not robotic, just accurate.
Let's pivot to the phrases that add texture to our language. Adjective phrases and adverb phrases. Single words are often not enough to capture a human experience.
Sure, we need detail.
Instead of saying the soup is hot, we use an adjective phrase. The soup is extremely hot. Instead of saying he ran fast, we use an adverb phrase to describe how it happened. He ran incredibly fast.
Adding descriptive clusters.
Yes. When learners practice swapping these clusters into their daily speech, they unlock incredible creativity. They realize they can trade a basic word for a rich, detailed phrase.
I completely agree that phrase substitution is how we build complexity. That is a great tool.
Thank you.
But that substitution only works if you understand the grammar rules underneath. You can't just throw descriptive words anywhere in the sentence.
Well, no, of course not.
Let's look at the truly advanced structures, where functional intuition frequently collapses. I am talking about gerund phrases and infinitive phrases.
Oh, wow. Those categories definitely carry a heavy reputation among students. They can be tough.
They carry that reputation because they require a high level of structural packaging. Let's explore why a gerund phrase even exists.
Go ahead.
Sometimes we need to take an active, ongoing event and freeze it. We freeze it into a single conceptual object so we can talk about it. We take an action verb, add ing to the end of it, and force it to act entirely like a noun.
Like putting an action inside a box?
Exactly. For example, swimming in the ocean, we have packaged that entire activity into one noun phrase. Then we can use it as the subject of our sentence. Swimming in the ocean is my favorite hobby.
It is a brilliant way to talk about actions as concepts.
It is brilliant, but it is structurally complex. If a learner doesn't explicitly understand that swimming in the ocean is wearing a grammatical mask.
A mask?
Yes, that it looks like a verb, but is functioning as a noun phrase. If they don't know that, they will be hopelessly confused. Their intuition tells them that verbs indicate the main action of the sentence.
I see where you are going.
Without structural rules, they will look at that sentence and wonder why an action word is sitting in the subject position without a person performing it.
I have to push back on the idea that the brain is confused by this, though. Let me explain why.
Please do.
The human mind naturally understands that activities can be treated as concepts. We do not need the specialized label gerund to process the reality of the action.
But they need to build the sentence.
Wait, hear me out. When someone hears, "Swimming in the ocean is my favorite hobby," their brain instantly visualizes the water, the movement, the joy. They understand the meaning perfectly based on the context.
Hearing it is different from speaking it.
The brain maps the phrase "swimming in the ocean" into the exact same mental slot as the word tennis. Both are just activities.
Right, comprehension is one thing, but production is another.
Yes, the brain can understand it when hearing it, but can the learner generate that structure from scratch if they don't know the rules?
Absolutely, they can. Through functional substitution.
How so?
Once a student learns the rhythm of the sentence like, tennis is fun, they can experiment. They can drop a new phrase into that exact same slot. They replace tennis with playing tennis.
Just swapping the blocks.
Yes. Then they replace it with playing tennis in the morning. They learn that entire blocks of words can be moved around like single units.
But they're still following a structure, but a functional one. That flexibility is what makes a speaker sound authentic and smooth. They stop speaking in a slow word-by-word manner. They speak in flowing, connected ideas. That smoothness comes from massive exposure and practice, not from analyzing a textbook definition.
Smoothness is highly desirable. I won't deny that at all. A speaker who flows naturally is always easier to listen to than someone translating word by word.
Exactly.
However, smoothness without structural accuracy is a house built on sand. It might look nice from the outside, but it lacks a solid foundation.
I think the foundation builds itself over time.
Not for everyone. In a professional environment or in academic writing, it simply does not matter how naturally your fragments flow. If your core structure is broken, the communication itself is broken.
Writing is stricter, yes.
This is why I maintain my position. Grasping the strict architecture of the language, knowing how the pieces interlock, and respecting the golden rule of subjects and verbs is the essential foundation for true mastery. The structural map guarantees your ideas are clear.
And, well, I maintain my contrasting view. While clarity is important, treating language like a strict engineering project limits the learner. Language is an organic tool for human connection.
It is a tool that needs rules.
If a learner focuses heavily on the natural rhythm of speech, on seeing how small word groups cluster together, they will unlock a much deeper level of fluency. They will read faster, speak with more confidence, and sound much more natural. The grammar names are just artificial labels we created later.
But they are useful labels.
The actual magic of language lives in its functional meaning.
Well, despite our very different views on the learning process, I believe we have arrived at a very strong point of convergence today.
I think so too.
We both fundamentally agree that human beings do not communicate in isolated single words.
That is undeniably true. When anyone first begins learning a language, they start with single, disconnected vocabulary words. Apple, run, happy.
We all start there.
Right. But staying in that word-by-word translation phase severely limits your ability to actually use the language.
It is an absolute necessity to move beyond it. Whether you view phrases as precise architectural bricks that must be carefully stacked, or as natural clusters of meaning that flow together. Understanding how words group up is the only real path forward.
Completely agree.
We must train our brains to process language in larger chunks.
So we encourage everyone listening to take this insight into their daily practice. The next time you are reading a book or an article, try to stop looking at individual words.
Look for the larger picture.
Start actively looking for these clusters. Notice how the descriptive phrases orbit around the main ideas to paint a complete picture in your mind.
And just as importantly, start using them when you construct your own sentences. Take those small descriptive fragments and weave them into your core sentences to provide depth and detail.
Don't be afraid to try them out.
Exactly. You have the tools to build complex, beautiful ideas. Just remember to double-check that your foundation is secure. Always make sure your core sentence actually has an action driving it forward. Keep building your communication skills piece by piece and phrase by phrase.